All right, let's call the meeting to order, please. Let's see, Mark Ehrman is excused absence. Paul will be seated tonight. First item on the agenda, consideration of meeting minutes from August 12th, 2020. Have any changes? Motion to approve with no changes.
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? No. Continuing other business. Status review, subdivision between two adjacent lots at the end of Levesque Street, reconfiguring and subdividing them into a total of 3 lots. Applicant Peter Marlowe, 15 Beechwood Ave, York, Maine, 03909. Property owner Degmar Development Corporation, 258 West Manchester Street, Lowell, Mass. Properties. After subdivision, the 3 lots become as follows. Lot A, map 113, lot 29, changed from 0.35 acres to 10,594 square feet or 0.24 acres. Lot B, map 113, lot 30, changed from 0.38 acres to 10,162 square feet or 0.23 acres. And lot C, map 113, lot 31, a new lot created of 10,753 square feet or 0.25 acres. The lots are in the general residential GR district, where minimum lot size for a single-family home is 10,000 square feet. 3 land use authorization permits were issued. LUP 2020-33, map 113, lot 29, lot A, Degmar Marlowe, house and a shed. Land use permit 2020-34, map 113, lot 30, lot B, Degmar Marlowe, house and a shed. LUP 2020-35, map 113, lot 30.1. Lot C, Degmar Marlowe, house and a shed. So the board's going to conduct an informational hearing. We've all received complaints from people concerned. Some of us have, I don't know if everyone has. Concerns from neighbors about what's going on. And I know, so we're trying to clear up some of the confusion. Paul, you had something?
Yeah, I actually had requested this meeting from you because of the email that I'd written to you as well as the Board of Selectmen and back in August. I realized that, and from what the board said at their August, I think it was August 3rd meeting, that the only thing outstanding here is really whether or not the lots meet the 50% disturbance. And I had requested the town to look into that. That was back in August. It's been, here we are in September, just receiving emails September 4th that they're just barely going to start looking into this. I don't find that as acceptable, given the complaints that we've had in the town, the members of this board, and I think some of the select board have received complaints as well. So, I mean, if you look at the dates that this stuff was talked about, this application and this project was talked about, on July 15th, Carol did a memo to the board, or talked to the planning board about potential land use violations. On July 20th, a cease and desist was issued. On July 24th, the cease and desist was rescinded. I sent an email on August 1st to the Board of Selectmen and to the chairman of the planning board. And today, when I see the emails that have gone back and forth, I was very disheartened to learn that our engineer still thinks that there's a cease and desist on this application, on this permit. And there is not one that I can find. So I'm really kind of looking for answers why it takes 30 days to get a confirmation as to whether or not these 3 lots have disturbed more than 50% of the area.
Okay. Cal, is there a cease and desist on this or not?
There is not currently a cease and desist. There was a cease and desist having to do with removing the water and sewer hookup to the sheds. I believe those were disconnected and capped off. Minimum, I think, of 5 feet from the building. And so he was given permission to continue building what he had been permitted to build, which was the primary residence and the sheds. So there has been a lot of communication, not just recently. I've only given you the recent stuff between the town engineer and the engineer for Mr. Marlowe. So this has been ongoing for quite some time.
Well, when I look at the cease and desist, and I'm copying it right here, there's nothing in the cease and desist about water and sewer. It all has to do with the accessory apartment building and these sheds. So the cease and desist clearly has nothing to do with, it didn't even talk about the 50%. It talked about the second dwelling being a accessory apartment, whether that was appropriate or not. And it really dealt with the dwellings. It had nothing to do with any water and sewer.
It looked like the sheds were going to be turned into dwellings. And that is with the water and sewer hookup. So that is exactly what was going on there.
Well,
And
there's nothing
the
in cease and
amount
desist
of
about that.
disturbance is something that has been in the process of discussion for the past month. So
I understand, that's my point. Why is it taking a month? A month from the time I brought it to the Board of Selectmen till today, and we still don't know. It's a simple getting a surveyor out there to define whether or not the site has been disturbed, 50% of the site has been disturbed.
Well, why don't you ask Mr. Marlowe?
Okay,
I'm not asking any more but you, Carol, I want to know. How, the town is the one that's supposed to substantiate whether or not Mr. Marlowe has disturbed 50% of the lot or not. It's not Mr. Marlowe saying, no, I haven't disturbed it. It's a surveyor doing a assessment of the site. Am I correct?
The town is not sending the surveyor out. He is having that determined by his surveyor.
And then, so what's the protocol? Give me the protocol on how this works then, because my understanding is that when things like that happen, we're supposed to have a, what do you call it? Where money's
Escrow.
an escrow account, and the escrow account is supposed to be set up, and the town engineer, along with the town, is supposed to take care of any concerns through the escrow.
That's if in advance they knew that they were going to disturb more than 50%. That would be part of the application for a land use permit. At the time that the permit was submitted, they did not intend to disturb more than 50% of the lot.
I
So there
understand,
was
because
no
that's what
escrow
Mr. Marlowe
account.
said, but I think that
There was no escrow account asked for at that time because there was no intention to disturb that much land. That's how it works. It's how what we're talking about now is not something that we set up a process for. It isn't.
it seems to me that the town should be the one to substantiate whether or not its regulations are being followed or not being followed, not the applicant.
Ron, do you want to step in here?
All right. First
hold
off,
on.
Peter Marlowe.
Hold on.
Okay.
Do you think maybe we ought to have I think some abutters are here that want to make comments, so maybe we ought to get their input.
That's
then-
fine.
Then you can address.
Yep.
All right, so I'll make a motion to open up public comment. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone from the public like to speak?
So we are on 44 West, so the outline of the property behind us, it looks like the secondary or the sheds, the foundation for the sheds are abutting our property line. And I haven't really been on the property, but from what I can see, all of the foundations are equally the same size for the footprint. So that would, put into some sort of speculation for future use of whether or not the sheds would be converted to, dwellings or rental units. And that's really our concern, because I think originally when the lot was subdivided, it was subdivided with the abutters' involvement that it would be used for single-family dwellings, one per lot with a shed. And it just seems like it's going in a different direction. So for us, it's, getting 3 new neighbors in a neighborhood that's, for all intents and purposes, all residential, is one thing, but getting 6,
rental
6
units.
rental units with constant turnover is just a little bit unsettling, and I don't think fair to the abutters, given that from the get-go, it was supposed to be used for something else entirely.
Okay.
So that's all I really have to say. So I'm just trying to understand what's going on and how one goes from getting a permit for one thing and then using the land for something else. So.
Anyone else have any comments at this time?
Does everybody on this board understand what's happening over there?
Oh, yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Walk the
Okay.
property
Well, I mean, a lot of us
All right,
drive by.
there's 6 full foundations. Okay, so as long as everybody understands.
Paul?
But I would just like to make a comment that Mr. Marlowe has stated and that Carol has stated, that the only thing that's going on that property is one dwelling and a shed or a garage. That's all that's been approved. Should anything else, should that change, Mr. Marlowe would have to come back to the town and either go through to the zoning board of adjustment for a special exception, or a variance, special exception, right?
Variance.
So is it commonplace to then have plumbing and electrical in sheds?
That issue was raised. As a matter of fact, I raised it, and it really, they are not, I was told they are not in the sheds. They're outside of the sheds. So they are, they are not in the sheds.
So
Um,
an
But
outhouse?
before anything else happens besides what he has applied for and gotten his permit for, he would have to come back to the zoning board. They would have to advertise it to all the abutters if he was going to change something or ask for a special exception or a waiver or a variance or whatever. And all of the abutters would then have a chance to come back in and speak to that. Am I correct?
Yeah.
So he has the right to rent out these units
He has the right to do what he's doing
every
right now.
weekend.
My only question was about the 50% disturbance. So,
Okay. Carol, have you identified everyone that's participating by Zoom? I'm sorry, I forgot to ask that.
No, I have not. Okay, let me see. I'm not sure who the person in the top right corner is.
Top left.
For your fire tablet,
It's Jenny Harrington.
oh, Jenny Harrington.
Jenny's.
Hi, Jenny.
40 West.
Jenny,
Hi.
Jenny, Miles,
Oh, yeah, Miles, I recognize.
W. Pelletier, Odin Surface, I think that's probably my wife. And there's a fire tablet, I don't know who the fire tablet is. It's not identified.
Jenny Harrington.
Jenny Harrington is the fire tablet.
Yes.
There's a fire tablet underneath.
Lady up
underneath
top
Jenny.
there, you
I think Jenny's
just
up
put
top.
your hand up.
And Jenny's up top, there's a blank fire
Okay.
tablet underneath.
Ask them to identify themselves.
Yeah. Can you all identify yourself, those who are participating?
Can you hear me?
Yes, what's your name, ma'am?
Oh, Jenny Harrington. I also put it on my fire tablet because it was my first time doing this, so I didn't know
Okay.
whether
Okay.
it would work on my computer or my fire tablet.
Got it.
Oh, okay.
All right,
So that's why.
got it.
Okay, so
Thank
no
you.
Miles, okay. Road and surface, can you identify yourself? Can you hear us? W. Pelletier, can you hear us?
Yes, Wendy Pelletier.
Wendy Pelletier, okay, thank you.
I don't know if it's my wife or not.
She must be muted. Looks like they're muted. I can see
Yeah,
the
it's
red
muted.
microphone.
She may be away from it. May just be watching it.
Okay,
Maybe Dave, I don't know.
all right. So Wendy or Ginny, would you like to comment at all?
For myself, I'm just very concerned about, what he's been doing. As you all know, he's right in my backyard and I see it every day. And I believe that, what he's doing is going to lead to a variance. And there's going to be a lot of controversy again about this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone? Go ahead. Someone else like to speak?
The
Sure.
sheds, are they supposed to be 1 story or 2 story, or do we know?
He's gonna, yeah, he can speak to that in a second. Okay. Sir, would you like
Are
to?
you ready for me?
I'm ready, I
Okay,
think.
where do you want, which one do you, there's a whole bunch of
Well,
questions.
start wherever you feel most
By timeline.
comfortable.
Okay, it took me 3.5 months to get my permit to do the job. So when you talk about timeline being 30 days, when this first happened, my civil engineer was on vacation. So in order to put all this together,
When you say this, you mean when you first applied for the permit?
no, when he
When-
first brought up that I have
Okay.
disturbance on the land,
Mhm.
the land is over 50%.
Mhm.
I've been working with Steve Tower from Saborn. I've been working with Jen McCourt. Okay, I've been working with the chief. I've been working with the town manager. I've been working with Carol. Been working with Ray, the town engineer. There's 7 people involved to put this together. And they communicate and then it's coming together now.
Mhm.
She is doing her site visit tomorrow morning at 7 a.m.
This is Jen.
My McCourt, Jen McCourt.
Yeah.
She's doing the site visit, okay? She's applied for the permit, okay, which I wasn't aware of, I wasn't told. I was told that I could extend the sewer. I extended the sewer, I put the manhole in, Nate inspected everything, we did everything the way we were supposed to, and then I had to fill up. Now there's even question on whether it even required a permit to the state for that short of an extension. But I'll do the extension. I'll pay her to do that. So on Labor Day, Steve Tower came out and shot the grade of the entire lot, okay? And then today, we redug up the sewer lines and he shot the invert of where we connected and the invert of where we ended up, okay? So now the town's agreed, because we only had 4 feet of cover, they're gonna want me to dig it back up and they want me to put down styrofoam, okay, and then recover it up. So that's one thing.
When you say they, you're talking about the town.
Yeah, it's a town.
Mhm.
So, and it seems to be that that's what's being agreed on. I don't know if Ray's approved that, but the state seems to be okay with it. So that's on the sewer connection. Because doing all this started other balls to get rolling. Okay, as far as water runoff, somebody said their land was getting flooded. There is no water runoff. That land absolutely comes right down to the middle. There is no water runoff on the lot. And you'll see that when she submits the plan. That's the final reason she wants to come out and look at it, okay? As far as 50% disturbance, nobody has been able to give me, out of 7 people, I don't know if you can you give me what is considered disturbance? It's a tough one, because if you're gonna tell me that anything that's moved at all, then you better run up the street here and get your engineer and do a stop work order up here, because that's gotta be 80%, depending on what you call disturbance.
First,
Okay,
I'd like to comment on that.
Yep.
We're not talking about up the street. That's on my list first.
That's fine.
Thank you very much
Yep.
for bringing that up.
Yep.
But disturbance, from what Carol has said, our town engineer, Ray Corber, has said that disturbance means if you put a dirt pile on top of the natural ground, anything you disturb on top of the ground is called disturbed.
I don't believe Ray Corba said that.
Well, I can.
No, I don't believe he did.
That's what disturb means.
I'm sorry, it doesn't.
Disturbance in regards to stormwater means if the natural ground has been disturbed so that it cannot accept or filter or do its natural job, then it's been disturbed. You put a dirt pile on top of there, you gotta then move it, you disturb the grass and stuff that was there, so.
Before I even got my building permit, I came here to the town. I got permission to remove the saplings. I've got this the third time I tell this story. And I didn't get the approval till almost November, and I went in and I cleared it. That means I went in, I cut the trees, I pulled the stumps, I rode my tractor over the soil. Are you gonna consider that disturbance?
If you drive your tractor over the soil,
There was no grass there now. That was leaves. It was a foot of leaves and mulch.
No.
Is that considered disturbance?
no,
Then that's what you're seeing over there. I only dug 8 by 16 foundations.
well,
So
They're 8 feet by 16 feet. They're not a 28 by 36 foot house foundation.
I think
For
the
a house
problem is on such
foundation.
Pardon me?
They're a house foundation.
For a house foundation.
I think the problem is on such small lots.
Yeah.
That it doesn't take much to disturb 50%. And I'm not saying whether you have or have not. I'm saying that I would like to see the town ascertain whether or not you have or have not. I've looked at it personally. I think you have. I don't think there's anything, I mean, I don't know what the hardship is in doing a stormwater protection plan so that you know, anyway, because you were so close to it, but, you know, to me, if you have, then you need to do one. It's not that big a deal. It's not like I'm saying you can't build because you've already had your permit to build a residence and a garage. But if, during that process, if you have disturbed more than 50%, then you need to get a stormwater plan, and that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, but-
And it seems.
And I
Simple
understand
request.
that. And I
Simple
will, if
request.
I have disturbed more than 50% but we'll do it by lot. We're not gonna do it by the entire
Well,
project.
you have to do it by law.
We'll do it by lot A, lot B, and lot C.
I would agree.
And I haven't disturbed 50%. That's my opinion. And it's the opinion of other people too. But we're gonna see what Jen McCord says because she's the civil engineer. And if she says she needs to do some stormwater protection, then we'll put it in. But it'll have to be designed.
Right. And someone asked how many stories these houses are?
Your sheds, I think, did someone ask?
No, the house themselves are 2 stories.
Okay,
The sheds, I think the gentleman was.
The shed's 1 story. It's just a simple shed for a snowmobile.
okay.
Yeah, it fits 1 snowmobile.
The shed with water and sewer attached
There is no water and sewer attached to the sheds.
There was going.
anymore.
No, not unless I ever come to the board, the zoning board of appeals, and they give me, a zoning board, and they give me permission to put an accessory unit in.
Okay. But I
But
thought
no,
I
there is none there.
Okay, but you ran water and sewer to the sheds?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't run it I ran them within 5 feet of it, because I didn't want to dig it all up later on. I own my own equipment. I did
Where
run
do
it.
we go?
Hold on.
Yep.
Okay,
And the town manager's aware of it, the chief's aware of it, Carol's aware of it. I did, yeah.
It was stated at a public meeting. with
Yes.
the Selectmen.
So it's not to the shed, so what was the pipes coming out then?
Yeah.
There's electricity there.
I can understand electricity. I've been around a while. I've never seen a shed on a full foundation. I've never seen water and sewer attempted.
Exactly.
It looks like smoke and mirrors to me, if you want to know the truth.
Yep.
What's next, a Ferris wheel? What's going on down there? I'd like to know. Will it fit?
yes,
A Marriott.
I met with the town. I have a permit for a single-family home and 6 sheds. That's all I'm doing.
three sheds.
3 sheds, yeah, on each, 1 shed on each lot.
What do you need the sheds for?
Doesn't matter.
Let's keep the conversation to what's
Jermaine,
relevant to this board.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I think that the people that showed up tonight have to know that the town will read here anything other than what he's been approved for. So that everybody here, if you have a concern that Mr. Marlowe is going to do something different with his sheds, before he does that, he's gonna have to come back to either the planning board or the zoning board of adjustment, and he's going to have a public hearing at which you're all gonna be invited. And if he says he's gonna build a Ferris wheel, then you'll have an opportunity to say, we do not want that Ferris wheel. So that's, and if I'm wrong, someone say something, but I think that's the case. I certainly, along with Steve, can't believe that water and sewer stubbed over to a shed, but I mean, if he stubbed it over to the shed and he comes to the zoning board of adjustment and they say, and he wants to put another building on there, and everybody throughout the process, it gets refused, everything he's done is at his expense, it's in the ground, and he can't use it. So just so everybody knows, whatever he's done underneath the surface cannot be used until it gets approved.
The other thing I'd like to note is the requirement that was put on me through the planning board, that I have to put up, you know, trees and not fencing, but trees and.
Well, you agreed to do that when you.
Yeah, I've agreed to
Yeah.
do that. And I'm gonna have to go back there and still dig more. I've been doing a few at a time, and I'm putting in some decent growth trees, not something from Home Depot that's a little shrub. I'm buying them through a landscape company, and I'm putting them in as we go. And it's been too hot to put any more in, but that's my plan. And I stand by my word. If they asked me to do it, I said, yes, I'll do it. If I was broke, I'd do it.
Okay, but you applied for your your permit during the pandemic, isn't that the case when we were shut down?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so it's not fair to blame the town that it took 3 months for your permit.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that, but I totally understand that. But 30 days in the lifetime of getting something designed through an engineer is, and everybody's busy as heck. I was lucky to get Steve Tower out there just to shoot the grades for Jen McCoy.
Mhm.
You know, she's in Henniker and she's doing the design, but she'll be there tomorrow. So it takes time to coordinate. She has to talk to Ray. Ray has to get back to her. Then they have to go to the state, and the state has to get, there's a lot of people involved in this. It's not two people talking to each other, oh, let's just do this and get it done. No, I'm not saying that at all, because believe me, I know what's going, this has been a difficult time for everybody.
Okay, sure, you had your hand up?
Yeah, what about the power panel out front that has the 6 spots for meters?
Six meters in the panel out front. The meter bank is
Yes,
6.
one is
Wouldn't that be cut down?
house A, shed, house B, shed, lot C, house, and shed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Paul, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. And it's a question for Carol. I would like to know how we go about defining what disturbance is. Obviously, my understanding of what disturbance is different than Mr. Marlowe's, maybe different than his engineers or whoever he's gonna use. Town should have a clear-cut definition for disturbance.
I think we should talk to Ray, because when we were looking at other developments, not necessarily this one, we understood that we were going on the assumption, I believe, that it was when you disturb the earth, when you dug up trees or you actually moved some of the topsoil off, and we were not counting as disturbance putting materials on, storing materials on the site. But Ray explained to us that storing the materials on the site did cause issues and was considered a disturbance, which prior to that discussion, we had not been considering that a disturbance. So we have evolved in our understanding, but we probably should get a very clear definition from Ray, who's an engineer, and we are not.
Can I speak on that?
Disturbance.
Let
Well,
Carol
I think
finish.
before you go-
Hold on. Let Carol finish here.
That's all I have to say.
Okay. Sir?
What's gonna happen then, any builder in town, anybody that builds here, is gonna have to dig a hole, put it in trucks, truck it out, put the foundation in, and then truck the material back in. That's an awful to put on any builder. have to do something. Think about that. If
Well,
you dig a
that stuff
swimming
you don't
pool in
want
your
that filled in
backyard
anyway.
and you disturb more than that, you're gonna have to truck everything out and then truck everything back in.
The reason that this is done,
Guys, you can't all speak at the same time.
But it's an issue, because I drove around this weekend to 5 sites that I know are going on, and, because I like, it's what I do for a living, and I enjoy it. And there's 5 sites, and every one of them doesn't meet that specification that you're looking for on me. There's not one of them. And they're right in plain sight, so somebody needs to make a determination, and maybe that's right. But I think the state, I believe the state says it's, once you peel off within 4 inches, that's disturbance. That's why I think there's a lot of contradiction.
Okay. Steve, you had a comment?
I was just wondering, all this going on, Ray, who's paying for Ray? We paying for Ray?
Usually every developer puts up an escrow deposit and
Yeah.
Ray Services
And
is
in this
billed against
case,
that.
we're paying for Ray, it's an enforcement issue.
That
So mine comes out of my budget, or your.
Everybody happy with that?
State law?
we may need to revisit that when we start.
Yeah. That's
Well, I
what
mean,
we
you're not
should
gonna know,
revisit that.
you're not gonna know it's an issue until you pay someone to investigate it, so I don't see how.
Yeah.
You're gonna send someone to bill, well, we need to investigate you, give us a retainer.
Okay, so I also should explain that, since we've had these issues, we've just, and because I got so far behind with, my parents dying and all that sort of thing, we now have a technical review committee, and we've been meeting for 2 weeks now, but it includes Ray, and that's, and his time comes out of my budget. But it includes Ron, who's the fire chief, and the code inspection person, and the health officer. Includes me, Ray Korber. It includes Nate Hadaway, who's the public works director. And it also includes Butch, but he's kind of like, like a pops in, pops out. And then Lisa, who was my new assistant. So, so each week we're going through the applications that have come in and figuring out, is stormwater management gonna be an issue? Is the retaining wall gonna be an issue? Is there gonna be an escrow account? How much is the escrow account gonna be for? Is it gonna be for both? Do they need a permit for putting, what those things are called, the helio piles in the ground for shifting houses, all those sort of things. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to streamline the process so that all those issues are vetted in the front, so we don't have to go back like we did with Mr. Marlowe and said after the fact, ooh, I think you disturbed, or you may have disturbed more than 50% of the lot. So we're hoping that this streamlines things and that we get a better more professional result. So that's what we're doing now.
Okay. Sir, you had a question?
I just wanted to let you know that the whole lot has been disturbed. He's excavated the whole lot. Rocks, stumps, scratched the whole surface, got it all nice. Piles and piles of rocks. So
I was there today and it wasn't the whole lot.
was a whole
I
lot.
was over there today, walked on all 3 lots.
Yeah.
And they went all 360%. And they went,
But he disturbed the whole surface.
just driving over, you disturb it.
I'm saying he pulled the
That's not a
rocks out.
disturbance of the lot.
Right.
And there's a lot of rocks.
It's New Hampshire.
You just dig, all you do is dig. I've been trucking them over to Calder, and he's selling it back to me. But it's everywhere you dig, it's just boulders. I've used some to build some retaining walls. Some of you have been over there, I'm doing a top-notch job on the landscaping, I'm making it
But you
look.
said if you disturb 4 inches, that's disturbed, right?
Well, we haven't had determination
Okay,
yet.
I'm just saying,
Mhm,
when you're taking out boulders like this, that's
mhm.
4 inches.
Okay. Hold on, lady had a question.
So I just had a question, and I don't know if it's relevant or if it, the way that the houses are set up, and then the sheds. So when you're coming down the end of LeBrec and to access those individual properties, it looks like there's a, I guess you would call it maybe an easement that comes between, you know, the home dwellings and what would be the shed dwellings. So it, and I'm not sure, I could be wrong, but it looks like the only access for folks who actually get to these individual homes is through that one easement. Where more traditionally you see, you know, each separate lot having their own driveway. So is that, I mean, how does that work?
Jimmy,
Is,
in this case, you're allowed to have so many driveways come off one access lot, road going in. That's what he's done here.
okay.
Okay.
I just
That
needed to
explains
be
what you're
educated
looking for.
because I wasn't sure.
It's not just a separate road going to the street for each one. Not necessarily having one road going to, each lot have a separate road going to the street. That's not necessarily how it works. If you have one lot going in, the access road's coming off it, you know, like 1, 2, 3, and the main road going in, that's basically what you have right now, correct?
Well, the only reason too that we have the easement there is because that was a request by the town through Nate Hathaway that he could be able to turn
Fire trucks.
the grader around, because they had to back the grader down LeBrec Street after they plowed. So I granted the town a 24 by 24 easement, and I put my two driveways together instead of separating them. So the town can pull in, back down LeBrec, and then drive down the rest of LeBrec.
You had mentioned that at the board meeting.
I've done everything the town's asked me. I've done everything that Nate Hathaway has asked me. If Carol has asked me for different things, I've done it. I've done everything that they've asked me.
And I was there today, Nate had you dig up the inverse, both ends, am I correct?
Yes, yeah. Nate's aware of, he came out while we're digging. We shot the grade. Steve Tower took the invert shots, sent them off to Jennifer, and he did the manhole at the end. And the outcome is, it sounds like they're gonna make me dig the sewer line back up and put some styrofoam down and then refill it up. Although LeBrec Street itself, it's not there's no 6 feet of coverage on the hot top part of LeBrec that the town owns. Because I was in the hole on top of the sewer and it only came to my shoulder. But I'll do what they ask, you know. I have no problem, I'll do it.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions? Sir?
I was just wondering if Mr. Marlowe would be willing to share what his eventual plans for the properties are once they're finished. Is he going to?
I'm going to live there.
No, he's
My
not.
partner's gonna live there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We didn't know if you were gonna, they were gonna be residential or if they were gonna be rentals.
I'm living in lot B. My partner's gonna be in lot C, and we may sell off lot A.
Thank you.
May.
Anyone else have any questions? Motion to close the public comment.
So
All
I-
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any of the board members have any more questions? Paul?
I still like, for the record, I would like to know what we as a board are going to define as disturbed.
Okay, that's something we're gonna have to discuss.
I mean, I think disturbed is when it has to deal with the stormwater protection plan for a reason. It's the way that the ground absorbs the water, filters the water, when it's in its natural vegetative state, whether it's leaves or anything else. When it's disturbed, it changes it, and that's why it's part of the stormwater protection plan. I would like to, before Ray makes a definitive ruling on that, I certainly would like to weigh in or ask some questions. I think Mr. Marlowe is doing what he said now, that he's building he's putting a shed, he's putting a foundation underneath the sheds, and if he wants to do that, that's fine, and he's got one residential unit there. I think that's what he's asked for. I just want, my question is about the 50% disturbance.
Okay.
And I'd like to see that answered in a timely fashion. I don't think that takes 30 days to do, with all due respect.
Okay.
everyone involved. It does not take that long.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Anyone else have anything else? So,
Yeah, just to go with that, I think there's two issues with disturbance, and this, separate from your case, just in theory in general and for our land use plan ordinance, there's the disturbance during the construction phase when you're moving stuff around. I'm assuming you're not leaving big piles of rocks and dirt there. You're gonna eventually do something with those and your land's gonna look nice.
Yeah.
But during the construction phase, there's a disturbance. And that is part of that stormwater ordinance, but it's also part of the SWIP, the state regulations. Then there's the final version of whatever you're doing, you're all done. You can't leave it so water is, running off onto your neighbor's lawn for the next 100 years. You have to mitigate that water runoff. And I think those are two separate issues.
So I think they're part of the same thing.
well,
Well, I mean,
the ordinance basically says no more runoff post-construction.
post-construction, right. So sometimes that's the one thing that we focus on. I think what you're bringing up is that during construction, there could be runoff during construction and mess up everybody's yard and mess up brooks and runoff, but then when he's all done, it's fine and all the water sinks in and doesn't affect anyone.
Correct.
So there's two sides of that.
Right.
And,
Like you said, I think,
again, separate from his case, just in theory, we as a board should be getting some input from Ray to see how we define that, how we regulate it, how we enforce it, and then how the operation of it. Like, do we have everybody who applies for anything set up an escrow account so that we can go back and investigate them? Some guy building a deck, okay, well, you're gonna put up, thousands of dollars of escrow money to build a $1,000 deck. I don't know if that
Well,
makes sense, but we should talk about it. But again,
We
it's
do have
separate
an
from what
enforcement.
he's doing right now, and I think it should be a conversation in theory, unrelated to him, but related to all of the construction that's happening in this town.
But I believe the siltation runoff, that's regulated by the state. You can't just dig up the land and dump
Absolutely.
it all into the river.
Absolutely, which is part of why we need to see what the state defines as disturbance.
It has to be the state.
Because that is disturbance versus when you're all done, that's lot coverage. Okay? And there's two different items we're looking
But
at.
we do have enforcement, because our application says if anything on the application has been submitted and it is not correct during construction or any of that the permit is pulled. So it's not a matter of, because you can just go and because he's here tonight, I'll use Mr. Marlowe's, say he does have more than 50% disturbance. The permit gets pulled, he corrects it, he has to do a stormwater, he gets the permit back, and then he then goes. So we do have that. And disturbance to me, OJ, is kind of like, how does the water run on the lot before it's even disturbed? If you do anything to it, it changes how the water runs and gets absorbed on anyone's lot. And that's as it pertains to stormwater, that's typically what the designation is.
Just walking
Go
across.
ahead, Paul. Joe wants to say something.
In
Okay.
partial agreement with you said, remember case of Simplex versus South part of the state, which was a major Supreme Court ruling in New Hampshire dealing with this type issue Paul's talking about. The town lost, cost about $5 million because they wouldn't let them go behind the building, disturb the soil, move it, put it back in around the building. This was a Simplex Supreme Court decision, if you remember.
I do.
And this was a big, same, and this is a large scale Simplex, this is a little scale. If he keeps telling a developer you can't move stuff on one corner lot while he's building, bring it back and level it off, you'll end up the same type of Simplex under the Supreme Court's ruling and will be in court for years and years.
Well, it just sounds like we need to spend some more time on what that really means. And it truly, it governs, it has a big outcome on every application. Because if you can't meet the requirement, and we don't even know what the requirement really defines, then how are we giving approvals? So because we can't define disturb, how would we give him approvals for 50%?
Well, he's
Or us?
Right, but I think you're oversimplifying the enforcement end of that, because you said, if he's not meeting the 50%, we give him a cease and desist. Do we just gonna say, well, Paul thinks that you're giving you over 50%, so we're gonna cease and desist you?
Well, Mr. Marlowe was very gracious tonight, and he introduced the lot up here on Main Street. And I can assure you that the lot up here on Main Street for Mr. Paris, who gave us a plan of undisturbed area, has all been disturbed.
Okay, we're on Mr. Marlowe's.
No, but what I'm saying in regards to what OJ says, you don't need an engineer to take a look at this plan, go up there and take a look at what's been done and say it's been disturbed. So we're not, in some cases, there's a little gray area. In other cases, there's no gray area. And we're not following someone's not paying attention to what's happening here. I don't know who it is. I don't even know whose responsibility it is. Is it Carol's? Is it Ron's? Is it Butch's? Is it ours? I mean,
Right.
someone should be looking at this stuff and saying whose responsibility it is.
Okay, I agree with that. Let's finish his place and go back discussing that after. Like, one case at a
I
time.
plan to do that, so thank you. I was just talking to what OJ spoke to. But I think we need to find that out, and the sooner the better. So Mr. Marlowe can know, so I can know, so other applicants can know. So how do we do that?
All right, you're gonna think about it?
Meantime, can we react to Mr. Marlowe's case?
Yeah.
Well, I'm asking Carol, how do we do that so we can relate it to this case and get a decision?
Well, what's happening now is we have our technical review committee and we're running everything by Ray first as part of the technical review committee. Because I'm certainly not qualified to go and look. And I remember looking at a couple of these lots and it turned out that they did not disturb 50% or more of the lot after talking to Ray about it. And it's not something that I could tell with my experience or lack of experience for doing that. So the Ray's eyes on the ground are Ron and myself and anybody else who calls in and makes a complaint. So right now, we're not really set up, I don't think, to be able to send somebody like me out there and say, oh yeah, he's disturbed 50% or more. I mean,
Well, see, I think it depends, and that's my point. So how are we gonna do it? How long does this take to find out what disturbance? I can look at this other application that was up here on Main Street, I can sit there and say as a
we're
layman,
gonna have, at our next meeting of our technical review committee, we will have that conversation.
I want it before that. Carol, this is something that comes up on every application. It needs to be defined, and it needs to be defined now. It shouldn't be hard to go to an engineer. Ray, if he's our engineer, if Ray can't do it, let's get somebody else. Ray's too busy, let's get somebody else. And let's find out what disturbed means, whether it's the state's definition of disturbed, or whether sometimes the town takes and tweaks its own.
Yeah.
But we should have that. We need that. It's part of our big part of our application.
Okay, so I think we've discussed this enough.
Let's get back to this.
We haven't come up with what we're gonna do, Jimmy. What are we gonna do?
Carol's gonna take it, it seems like she has a handle on it. We have the technical review committee.
That could be,
This
2
town
months.
gets too complicated as now. If
No,
you get
what
a
did
small
you say,
house lot,
how often did you say you meet?
Weekly.
Okay,
Wednesdays.
so that's less than 2 months. I assume you'll bring this up at the next meeting and even maybe give Ray a heads up that one of the things that
So what's gonna happen is tomorrow I'll send Ray an email and I'll explain to him what happened
tonight,
And then that'll be part of our discussion, because it's not gonna be Ray doing executive fiat. It's gonna be a discussion between Ray and those of us on the technical review committee, so that we can all come to an understanding about what it means. And probably Ray will be the most articulate and have the most information about it. But part of that will be how we enforce it. And that will be part of the discussion, I imagine, at the technical review committee meeting.
why don't we apply this to the OSP, get one information from them, and have them come and give us a hearing on it. We'll go to one of their classes so we know more about it. State offers these classes for free. Would that be a point to look into?
Well, the-
Yes, I'm not sure that they're doing anything like that right now.
But I think
Well, you
there's-
go to the North Country Council, they have the same thing, we're a member of the North Country Council. I'm sure they'll find something to come up and give us, talk to us about. We're paying them to be on the North Country Council, we can get something back from them, because we have not applied for anything from them for years. And we're on there, we're paying them to be on their council.
Well, we've used them for traffic studies, several,
When's the last big traffic study?
probably a year ago.
Well, they've done it last year. We can apply for more. Over the past 10 years, we only use them once or twice. We can ask, use them more and more. They would appreciate being used and being able to answer to why we're paying them to belong to them. I talked to them before, and they're willing to come up and do stuff. Why don't we approach them and have them give us more data? It's a free service we're paying for. We've already paid for it, so we might as well use it. Am I wrong?
We already paid for it. It's not free. We're paying for it.
Ron wants to say something.
What's that?
Ron wants to say something.
Ron?
So, we're gonna be meeting again next Monday. If you would like to have someone attend via Zoom or whatever, the next technical review, and let's get this ironed out.
I'd like to go.
Raise on that.
Okay. Would anyone from the board like to go?
I'd like to go.
All right. Anyone else interested?
I'll try to get there.
What time is it?
Wait a minute, we can only have,
10 a.m. I'll send you an invite, Paul.
It's Monday, I thought it was Monday.
Wednesdays,
Wednesdays,
It's Wednesday,
yeah,
this coming Wednesday?
every Wednesday.
every Wednesday.
And I'll see if Jen can have the report and
I mean-
whatever she's doing, draw.
I think there's two parts to this. One is, as Carol said, is how are you gonna enforce it?
okay.
But the other thing is.
Let's wrap up here.
But
with-
wait a minute, the
You
planning
need
board
to
has to,
define it.
the planning board has to weigh in on what this actually means too. It's gonna be part of our ordinances, right?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean.
I mean, the
certainly
planning board
we
weighs
need
in on
something
what the
we need to
ordinance actually
define.
means and what the wording means, and then the enforcement comes from the town. Because the town is the enforcement leg of the ordinance,
Administration.
the administration. That's the town. So there's two parts to this thing. It's not just the town coming up with what the Butch or Carol or Ron say disturbed is. It has to come to the board, and the board has to say, yeah, we agree with that, and we're willing to put that in as part of our ordinance. I'm like, is that?
Yeah, I think
In
the
a land
planning,
use plan ordinance,
what's that?
What's that?
put it,
Oh, the
Revise it.
stormwater management.
stormwater management, but it's part
Well,
of,
just define what disturbed means in the ordinance.
it's hard to enforce something that isn't clearly defined.
Right. All right.
All right, anything else here?
Well, I could have a lot, but I want to go on my supper.
Okay.
We're talking about with respect,
Just quickly to say that I want to thank you all for coming. And just to say that this is a good example of how the local process works. I mean, Mr. Marlowe came to the Board of Selectmen after that cease and desist because of neighbor complaints, comments that we got back. I didn't go look at his land, wasn't aware until people started coming in. And it was at that meeting that we directly talked about water and sewer to the sheds, what's happening with the sheds, what are they used for? They can't be used for living space. And it was a public meeting where he stated that those sheds were gonna be used for sheds. Even though it looked like possibly there were other uses gonna be used with water and sewer running towards them. But because of that input from neighbors, we had a meeting and it was very clear moving forward that in order to do that, he's gonna have to go to the ZBA and notify everybody. So again, it was good to get that input from people and to have you show up here. I think that the town has been made aware of what's going on. He's been third time that I've seen you since the approval to come back and explain what's going on. Is it moving ahead at the speed we wanted? Maybe not, but the engineers are involved and we're trying to keep a thumb on top of it, and we have someone who's at least communicating and getting back and forth with us, either directly or through his engineer.
Also, as far as the water line, sewer line that go into a shed, I have looked at my shops too, and nobody's living in them. They're hooked up for toilets and waters. They've been there for years. They're not a homing dwelling, they're a shop. So if you have to go to the bathroom or shop, you don't have to truck all the way across the yard into the house. That's another way of looking at it.
Snowmobile.
No, I'm saying, if you have water lines there, that could be used for another. But you'd have to go for water and sewer taps and do all the rigmarole, but that's a different issue here, but in my case, they've already been plumbed 40 years ago. So you don't have to run across the 20 feet of driveway to get to the house, to go to the bathroom. It's not a dwelling, it's a workshop.
How big is your lot?
I have 15 lots, they're all 50 feet wide by 400 feet deep.
His is 10,000 square feet. You can walk to the house to go to the bathroom.
I can also shit in the shovel, throw it out the window too.
Take it easy.
Hey,
Take it easy.
Again, he is.
Good one, Joe.
At a public meeting that he's not running the water and sewer to those sheds. And they have to be at least 5 feet, which you said they are.
I can tell you, as long as this board's here, and as long as I'm on this board, if something comes different than what they portray it as, it will come back before the people, because I'm a firm believer that neighbors should be informed of what's going on and have to say anything.
I agree with Paul, in fact. I
Thank
talked
you,
to him
Paul.
about this 4 weeks ago, same time you talked to him, and we decided to have a meeting tonight.
That's
Am I
why
correct?
I requested it.
I also asked him for that, same time. It wasn't just one person that asked him.
Well, again, some of us got calls from neighbors, that's why we're having this
Correct.
meeting.
Yeah, I mean, what came out of this tonight was.
Because everybody in the planning board wants to help
Mhm.
everybody in town, one way,
Yeah.
best of what the regulations are.
So I mean, I think at this time, we don't have to have a hearing whether he's in violation of his subdivision approval. That would have been the next step, depending on the discussion here.
I think we just need to clarify the 50% and what disturb means and move on it so that everyone's clear.
Is any lot in town you did, if you just disturb any big old foundation, just disturb more than 50%. No matter what size of lots you are. So in other words, you don't want anybody to build.
Not true.
Bill, you ready?
Well, I mean, they can apply for waivers if it's a flat lot. They can apply for waivers if they don't feel they should have to, so.
Well, and you've granted a couple of them here.
Yeah, we've had waivers. All righty, thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Moving on, is there any new business?
I have several things under other business, Mr. Chair.
All right, hold on.
Is it? You know,
To me, that's the
Are we
big,
taking a
that's.
break or what are we doing?
It's all fine.
yeah, it's all right.
Jim, you having a meeting?
No, you just grab one.
Just, you know, honestly, this lot, Bobby's lot, they're not big enough. Do what you gotta do, you know, disturbing the whole lot. Now, say, he's got 3 trees on his lot, he wants to save more. He likes them, he wants to save 3 of them, he digs all around and everything, gets his house built. Well, now they're all the boats. They're gonna do 15 foot, a piece to get him
You
down.
want to hold up, we come back?
It's just, go ahead.
Okay.
It's not worth really any interest.
Are we taking a break?
What I'm doing.
No, we're going. She had to get someone she didn't know.
That's when it makes sense. I mean, we can control
All
that.
right, any other business?
I have several things.
All right, go ahead.
One of them relates to the same topic here is on Mr. Paris's lot up here. He was very close in his original disturbing plan that he had.
Mhm.
And he had disturbed, I think it was,
He was at either 14.8 or 14.9. I remember the.
14,869. He was very particular about, because I had asked him, he was so close, that I said, why don't you just do a stormwater protection plan? Management plan. And in his plan, he highlighted all the area that's not supposed to be disturbed. And if you look at it today, just drive up there, this whole big area here, in between the main building and the 3 lots, it has been totally disturbed. It doesn't take an engineer to see that this is not what was said.
And now what are you saying for disturbed? Because he put the gravel piles there?
Oh, no, he actually dug, when he dug the foundation, I mean, that whole area was dug up.
Mhm.
So it wasn't just gravel, it was dug. I mean, and there's that, and again, that area was all grass. The horses, the horse and dog shoes out there was all grass. It's now dirt.
Mhm.
So whether you put dirt on it or you dug it up, and he dug it up, you know, because like they said, you've got to dig it up when you're digging foundations, as Mr. Marlowe said here, you know, you're digging this stuff up. But I tell you that I believe, you know, when disturbance comes as a term related to stormwater, because it relates to how the groundwater flows on the ground. And once you just move anything, you change that. And that's truly,
This is the one where he had specifically asked Butch and I whether disturbance included putting materials on the lot. And that is when Butch and I thought that that did not include, that was not a disturbance. And so he specifically asked, and he was specifically given permission to put the materials on the ground. And that's when we learned after that, when the subject was raised later, that was considered also a disturbance.
but this is not even, where he disturbed Carol, it's not where he just put where the material is now. That's actually over here where he doesn't, also where he said, he's piling this way. He piled that big pile of loam right here. I mean, there's still the right of way from the state that comes in quite a ways on that lot, but this particular area right here, I mean, he's at 14,869, he just, and this whole thing has been disturbed. The thing that gets me is that during this whole process, when we talked to Mr. Paris, he said, I've hired, and who's this surveyor? Gardner Kellogg. He has staked it all out. We're gonna be very careful about not disturbing any of this. And you know what? Once they get the permit, out the window it goes, and the stuff just gets disturbed. And that's my,
I understand what you're saying, Paul, but, you know, we have to take him at his word until he actually does something.
well, I know that, but we have to treat people fairly, and when they don't respond according to their word, then I think we need to say, hey, stop. This one's pretty obvious, real obvious.
On the other hand, I know firsthand, it's impossible to run around that lot and not disturb everything.
Right.
Well, any
We
house
gave
in
them
town, you
permission to
can't.
build this stuff, you know?
But, see, that's why most people
Yeah.
do a stormwater protection plan,
Yeah.
because then they can disturb
I
it,
can
and then
see that.
there's a plan for it.
Rod, you want to say something?
Yeah, so, you know, Paul's right, that a lot of these lots are getting disturbed over this, but I wonder if the applicant is so focused on just assuming he's only gonna do this 49.9%, but we're not asking him where he's gonna put his material storage during excavation and, you know, and actually defining the line and don't disturb that area, you know, like we've got a couple of lots where they staked out the area in the woods, but then we find out after the fact, some of the markings have been moved a couple of trees back. As long as the markings are there when we show up, we assume that it's still within the boundaries of the under 50%, you know, when they're clearing the lots. So without actually being a surveyor and going out there and marking where they worked, when you look at it with the naked eye, if they took a few extra trees here and there and went over, it's gonna be tough without having a surveyor to, so that's kind of,
And it doesn't take long to get a surveyor to go out and do that. I mean, a surveyor can do
it's
this.
just funding it.
What you can also do is take your GPS, which is accurate to the 1 foot, and the surveyor puts the stakes out, mark the coordinates, go back, and use the same coordinates, go back in by hand, and in a matter of 10 minutes, find the stakes it should be. Not ingenious to do that.
I mean, all I'm saying is that,
Even automotive GPS will do the same thing. Use it by hand.
Will it stand up in court though, because if he
Well,
shuts
there's a
something
10-year,
down
there's a 10-year
because we
apprenticeship
used our piece of equipment.
for a surveyor.
What's that?
There's a 10-year apprenticeship for a surveyor, so for a layperson to go out there and say, use that as the expert testimony, that's hard.
no, I wouldn't ask expert testimony, but what I'm saying is, on this last one that I told you about, Mr. Paris is, I mean, it clearly should be able to call Mr. Kellogg, that's his name, Mr. Gardner Kellogg, get him back and say, hey, here's the plan, it appears like it's been disturbed, has it been disturbed? And if he says yes, you go to the applicant and you say, you gotta stop. You need a stormwater protection plan, and we gotta get you moving. The stormwater protection management plans are for the benefit of the town. And that's what they're there for. They're to protect against water, stormwater going where it shouldn't be going. They're to protect the town from too much stormwater going other places and causing problems for other people. So it is for the protection of the town. And we really, this is not a lighthearted thing. I mean, with all these rains and stuff that are changing, the amount of rain we're getting and not this year, obviously, but, in the past, we get some pretty big deluges and it changes. I mean, I've actually seen this year places wash out that have never washed out before. And we have hardly had any rain. But when we do get the rain, it comes so hard that it washes, whether it's because of groundwater is so dry, whatever the reasoning. And it needs engineers to do that, but it's a very important part. That's why we've done that. I mean,
Well, and another point here though is some of the architects have gotten very creative in their calculations on their submittals. Then when Ray plugs in that data, their numbers aren't accurate.
Right,
So,
pretty consistently inaccurate.
right, so we get plans that say they're only their total disturbed area is 14,900 square feet. And that's a real number on, I'm not gonna name the applicant. But then when Ray got involved, we had him double check the numbers. We're a month and a half into the engineers going back and forth because of the peer review period of time. It's 15 days.
Yeah.
So, but it was shown that the original engineer for the applicant was incorrect in his calculation of the disturbed area. So we're taking in plans that say 13,000 or 14,000 square feet. But the plan isn't right to begin with. The calculation isn't right for the waypoints that are on. It looks good to Carol and me and even Nate if he looks at it. But when the town engineer plugs it into his software, the waypoints from the markings from the surveyor, so now he's about 18,000 square feet. So how do we overcome that situation? So we formed this technical review committee so that anything that's somewhat suspect, it's going right to Ray. He's going to plug it in, run the numbers, and come back to us and say, yeah, we need an escrow account. We need to thoroughly review this. It's going to need stormwater management. Retaining walls are in question. So that we're not trying to chase these people after the fact. You know what I'm saying?
So is there a negative to requiring an escrow account if you are within, so we said 50% of the lot or 15,000 square feet? So if we say that you have to set up an escrow account if you're within a certain percentage of that way the town can have the money. If you're not going to use it, you can give it back to them. There's nothing that says you can't give it back to them. But at least we then have an escrow account that does two things. If they disturb more than 50,000, or if they even get close to that, we have that money to go out and hire a surveyor and get the thing looked at. If they don't, and it's obvious they don't, then we just hand them back the money. But at least we have the ability to do that. And, maybe people who want to build a house got to put up $5,000 in an escrow account to the town. They get it back at the end of the building if they don't disturb any of that stuff or they don't have any problems. I mean,
You're saying that 5,000 like it's 5 cents.
Well, let's go with it.
I mean, how much does Ray spend on these reviews, these technical reviews? Is it an hour? Is it
For
2 hours?
stormwater management, the average is a $1,500.
Well, they start out $1,500.
Yeah.
But it depends on the engineering firm. Let me just say that. So it could be that if it's, a fairly accurate professional job, then $1,500 will do it. And if not, $1,500 does not do it. So then I'm constantly like, you need to put in more money. I email, this job is stopped. Review is stopped. Please submit.
But, let's say if I have a project up the street where there's questions as to whether or not he's over 50%. just to make that simple determination, how much would that run?
I'm not sure what
I
a
don't
surveyor
know.
gets.
I mean, that's,
I don't know, but I do know that people are asking me for the names of surveyors, and they're telling me that the surveyors are months out.
I believe you.
I
Months
think
out
he was
fall
very
for the guys
lucky
when
to
it come
get
off the
Steve
machine.
Tower to come there
Yeah.
on Labor Day.
That costs.
Well, there's all sorts of surveyors, so not just Lincoln and Woodstock, there's surveyors from all over New Hampshire. So if we have to reach out and start doing that, then that's.
It's not just our town that's being active though.
No, I
It's called
hear you.
COVID.
Gardner, he's like the top of the class.
Mhm.
you know.
So your agenda, your topics are, we need to define disturbed area.
Right.
So we can correctly enforce this.
Yeah,
Then you're looking at a possible escrow account for any new site development, single-family lot or whatever, for review of the plans.
I just asked about that. I didn't say we needed, I was asking the board what they thought. I mean, if there was,
Not a bad idea.
I mean, if they
Well, I
were
mean,
close to it, then we could
I
get the
mean, I guess
thing done.
how difficult are we gonna make it for people?
Jim, we make it even more difficult
They're
if we
making
get to this point.
They're making it
Difficult.
difficult.
They're making
So-
it difficult. I mean,
Because right now, we are spending taxpayer dollars reviewing this, and if he's over the 50%, the first case, then he's gonna have to set up an escrow account, then we'll back charge against that account for what got us to that point. But if he didn't disturb the 50%, then we just ate all that time.
Well, and timing is of the essence
Right.
too, because if you take a look at the gentleman up there on Main Street, he's ready to grass back in, so how are you gonna find out how much he disturbed? I mean, there needs to be some,
I mean,
But for example, though, he's gonna grass it back, and it's gonna be back to where it was when he started.
I understand
On
that,
a
but I
level
mean,
lot, on a
but
flat
the,
lot, so.
well, but
Well,
the thing
we're
about the
going with it.
stormwater plan, Ron, is that if he just throws grass out there and seed out there and doesn't do the drainage, I mean, do the grading right, it could be, the water could be
Oh,
going
yeah.
off the
No,
property, so,
I
and
get
that's what stormwater drainage, just keep everything onto the property. It's not supposed to be going off of the property,
no increased runoff.
no increased runoff,
Post-construction.
and that's what all of this stuff comes
Post
up.
runoff is not to be increased.
Well,
from the
just
pre-
like my
Well,
wood
you were
yard
gonna
is,
say something.
Yeah.
I went to when I did my wood yard, I filled in a lot. I went to the state had engineer come up with stakes and what I could do in the height elevation for the whole wood yard, all the way down to below where my entrance is. But that was before the fact, not after the fact.
Mhm.
I went by their regulations, this, if you go any more than this, you'll get more, you have to come back for it and do some more. This was the state, on my land, the state came and approved it all. Can't find documentation, it was 30 years ago, but still.
Jim, I wonder if, just again, for discussion purposes, we look at a process where we say, okay, the planning board is looking at a plan where the disturbance is whatever, 49%. We know it's gonna be close.
Right.
Could we, as part of the conditions of approval, number one, say that the owner or their surveyor needs to adequately mark the areas of non-disturbance with ribbon or posts or something?
That was done up here,
So,
That was done
Mm.
at
Okay.
Paris.
okay,
at
we
the
could put that
terrace.
in the, we could put that in the conditions of approval. And then also put in a process by which would, or maybe just if it's within X amount of percentage, that they have to set up an escrow account. And again, it would just be for the enforcement side of it, not for designing a whole stormwater plan. But for the enforcement side, whatever, $1,000 of escrow. They get the whole thing back if there's no issues. But if there's an issue, the town at least has some funds to use to trigger the enforcement.
I mean, I guess if you're worried about ones that are closed at 49 or, 40, why don't you just make it, if you disturb more than 48% of your lot? If you're worried
But
that
how
some
do
of
you
these,
tell them?
They'll just keep playing the game.
Right.
yeah, I mean, you're not, I mean,
They'll just keep,
I think half the time it's impossible to do.
You take a
But
big.
that's why, I
development.
mean, think about it, over here at South Peak, they do a stormwater plan. Why do they do that? Because they know they're gonna disturb that amount of lawn. You know, I mean,
but of course, this was put in because some of the steep lots were causing problems. That's really why it was put in, not
Yeah.
to
But I mean,
Not
we
to just
still,
grind everybody down with an escrow account.
and part of the reason I brought up the Paris law up here was because one of the abutters was concerned about what, came here to the meeting, or was he on whatever,
On the Zoom meeting.
on the Zoom, and he was concerned about the water on the lot. So, and I knew that, and they, as Carol said, it was all staked out. And what happened? The applicant just kind of, here we go, and that to me is a clear, blatant violation and should be dealt with immediately. Mr. Marlowe, we can't get to first base because his wasn't staked off. So someone needs to say that, and we need to define what disturbed means.
Well, that's the first issue, because we can't enforce disturbance if,
Right.
if someone was told that the pile of dirt isn't disturbance, then.
I might like what you're saying about marking it off, and someone,
Each
the town goes up, takes a picture of it and says, clearly, here's a picture of it, it's on the plan like Mr. Paris says.
But we need to define disturbance first, so that we know
Right.
what would be a violation.
I agree.
So-
And then they need to mark it, so maybe those two things would help us out of both of these cases.
Well, I
If
think-
Mr. Marlowe had staked his, and if we knew what disturbance meant, then we could clearly sit here tonight and talk about.
But I think you made a good point, like if we make them truck all the fill off the lot and then have them truck it back in, which are ready to backfill, it's pretty onerous on them.
Hey, Jimmy, do you know the state law, if you took more than 70,000 yards off a property,
It's a
you have to
gravel
pay a tax on it
Mhm.
to the state, and you bring it back, your tax gets from the other town? Are we gonna have somebody enforce that?
I mean, we don't want to
No,
stop
but I'm saying,
development either, but I
we
think
gotta
we
think
wanna-
about all the options.
We don't want to stop development either.
I was just taking an excerpt of what he said. like,
We got to treat
you know,
everybody fairly.
But I'm saying, if you get to the point you start taxing, they gotta truck it all off. There is a tax bill after so many thousand
Right.
square yards coming off a little property.
Right,
state
Well, that's
law.
what he insinuated,
Without
that's what we're
revenue
getting to that point, if we keep tightening things.
Well, Loon Mountain's moved in more than 15, 20,000 yards at one time, from one development to another over the years.
Yeah, but I think if you're using it on site, it says exemptions.
But if they bring it to College,
There, I think
somebody
there is,
else,
I think if you use it on
it's
site.
out of town.
Yeah, if you're building roads, there's exemptions for that.
But if they bring it across the town line, it's not,
Well,
exempt.
it's a harvesting, but I mean, I think,
But it's this stuff that we gotta think about.
So we beat this up.
what's that, sir?
So we come to two conclusions here that,
We need to define disturbed.
and I like what OJ said about, maybe we should change our ordinance and include something about marking out, clarifying what is not to be disturbed before an applicant starts a project, so that they're the ones setting the parameters. Here's my parameters that I'm saying I'm not gonna disturb. And once they set them, they've set the parameters. If they disregard that and disturb it, then we can say, look, you set the parameters. This is how much, you said you weren't gonna disturb. Like Mr. Paris, he set those and he disturbed them, so now it's the town should go to him and say, hey,
Okay.
to me, those are two things that clearly we need.
We just need to discuss that, we started to go back, we have to go back and start discussing the park law regulations, it's already September. It won't be long for we're into the,
I've got that on my list too, so I didn't want to make this thing go, I got a couple other quick ones for you, but. So where we all done with the disturbance
I
and
think anyone's, all right, so it sounds like this one up here is under, you're looking into it? Okay.
you can also call the OSP, have them send you data on it.
with regards to what Joe just said, the Loon Mountain parking lot that's on, as you go across the bridge on the left, the one that they use in the winter.
On the left or the right?
On the left,
The east side.
on the east side.
Going down this road here or the other?
Before you go across the bridge on the east side,
Loon Mountain Road.
Oh, before you go across the bridge, all right, that's what I was confused about.
before you go across the bridge on the east side.
Okay.
Yeah,
Loon uses that for parking. It's never been approved for a parking lot, A. B, what they're using for an access is a handicap ramp. So that's a handicap ramp that they've got built up there, so I've asked about this from the planning board a couple times, and we haven't gotten anywhere. I mean, there are some things,
how long has that lot been there?
Oh, since they did the bridge.
Half of it was the old bridge.
Well, no, the law,
Before.
I don't know if they used that the first year the bridge was done or not, but I can't quite remember, but I know they've used it in the past 2 years maybe. But that should come in for site plan review,
Okay.
I think. I wanted the board to weigh in on it as to whether they thought it should come in. You know, it's not a matter of, do I think it's appropriate or not appropriate? I think it should come in for site plan review. Because it's something that was never there, it's an addition, it's a change of use, it's on, they're using a walkway for an access to it, handicap walkway at that. I mean, there's a crosswalk right there that, you know, so that's all I wanted the board to weigh in on what they thought.
Well, the same thing goes on, this bridge going across to the South Mountain. Loon Tradition parks all the cars to the right and go across the bridge to the right. It's not their land. I've asked 3, 4 times to get permission, to see if they have a written easement to park their cars in. If that land gets sold, that's 300 acres to a developer, tells Loon Mountain they can't park there, where they're gonna park their vehicles. And there'll be a violation of state law, federal law, because they don't have enough parking off the street to go to ski their ski area.
You're talking down here at
Yeah,
South Peak, right?
Correct.
That's a whole different
That's
issue.
a whole different thing, I'm talking
I
about
think
this.
And there's-
I know, but I've
Didn't
asked
we
about
ask
the
that
other
question when
4
Loon
times
came in for
already.
their new chairlift?
What's that?
Didn't we ask the question when Loon came in for
Yeah.
that parking lot?
Yes, and
Can we look-
they have there's a legal, I don't wanna
You
call
got
it
it
an
forever.
easement, there's an agreement, a legal agreement that,
No, they never found it. They never gave it to me.
But I
I
think
asked
it's-
for it, they never sent it to us.
Okay,
Uh-oh.
No, it's part of the original site plan for that over there. There was an agreement between
it's,
Syntax and
It's-
Loon.
as far as I understand, it's not an easement, which is a particular spot on a piece of property that's encumbered by some rights of some other person. Okay, it's not an easement. What they have is an agreement as part of their cooperation between the landowner and the ski area, that they have to provide X number of parking spaces. Can be anywhere they want.
I realize that,
Okay,
but they haven't shown us
so-
the agreement. That's what I've been asking for
Well,
the last year and a half.
that might be a matter between
I
the two
don't
parties.
know if we have,
If
we're
they don't
privy
have
to
it,
that.
Yeah.
the new owner could say, get off my property, you can't use it, and Loon Mountain would be losing about 1,000 parking lots.
And
Well,
that's,
What OJ said was they have to be able to provide somewhere else.
Lincoln's so small, where are they gonna get the parking
That's
lot?
not up to
it's
us.
not up to us.
They have to provide.
In the long term, though, it could affect the town if you lose 1,000 cars a day, that's 3 per car, that's 3,000 people, you could be skiing, maybe in the.
So they could say, they can make an agreement with Whalesdale and say, we'll bus them from Whalesdale to Loon,
Perfect.
right?
Problem solved.
We all still love
Let's move
it.
on, let's move back to the original problem we were talking about before we skip ahead to the.
Parking lot on
The
the
non-issues.
east, on the east side before you go over.
I'm just trying to clear up some things. that-
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know, it just started and
Should we send them a letter and say, we'd like you to come in for site plan review?
well, I mean,
and
was that part of their deal when they put the bridge in, that they could do that?
No,
You, we're getting
I
vicious.
don't know, we've been around everybody.
I didn't say, I swatted him and missed over here, but
So I wear the hat.
I don't know.
We certainly should check, can we check into that and see if it was a part of the original approval? I don't believe it was. And if it's not, can we ask them to come in for site plan review and submit an application so we can just formalize it one way or the other? Does everybody agree to that?
Yeah, we're gonna look into it.
Let's make the inquiry.
Okay. Great. The other two ones are quick.
All right,
Carol had mentioned, and I'm not sure how this goes with inspections and stuff like that, but maybe Ron can answer this more. Rock walls, Carol mentioned something about having rock walls, having problems with rock walls and height, and Butch mentioned something too. I mean, is that all part of the review committee? When someone comes in and does say they do a driveway, and they build a retaining wall in their driveway, does someone go up and inspect that rock wall to see if it's 4 feet? And if it's, are we hard on the 4-foot thing? Is it 4'1"?
We have to be hard because it's the building code, state building code.
4 feet from
From the bottom of the
the
bottom up.
bottom of the first course.
Even if that
It's
first course is
buried.
underground.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right. So is that happening? So if someone
Well,
comes in and builds a driveway, and how much of it has to be above 4 feet? Is it just any of it? Because I remember we
Any
talked,
of it.
Oh,
any of it.
Any of
it
it.
starts with the foundation, basically, of that wall.
because we talked about it, you know, when that whole thing around that hairpin corner with that house up in there, I can't remember what their name was, but I'm just wondering, because I've seen seen some rock walls that are being built, and I'm not sure if they're about 4 feet or not, and I wonder how we treat all that. Is there
Okay,
someone
so what's
inspecting this? How does that
happening
work?
What was happening is they were putting rock walls on their plans and then having no height associated with it. And then representing to me that the reason they were no height on the plan was that they were less than 4 feet high.
So my point was, does someone go back and inspect that to say, hey, this is X?
If they pull the permit for a driveway or a landscaping wall or retaining wall, we would definitely look at it. But if they're doing a driveway without a permit, resurfacing the driveway, and decide to do some landscaping or something,
We don't know about it.
we don't know about it.
So how, I mean, it's a pretty small town, how would think, so should we know about it? Should we have something that says,
Well, I guess if someone files a complaint, you'll follow up on it.
but we shouldn't wait till a complaint, should we? I mean, that seems kind of weird, that's not very good for the homeowner that says, you know, hey, look, I didn't realize I was doing this wrong.
If they didn't fill out an application to build a wall, I mean, I guess if one of our staff sees it, that's one thing, but otherwise, there's no other way to do it except for wait for someone to mention. or
Shouldn't we say
complain.
that any wall requires a permit? So that
Yeah,
they
but
can
what if
look
they
at
don't
it and
put
say,
one? I mean,
so
who's
so
gonna
at least
go-
they know?
I say, if it,
I don't think you have the staff to do that.
Right.
Currently.
If
I
we do,
mean-
it's getting out of hand cost-wise,
Maybe they say,
taxation wise.
maybe if you build any rock wall, can it just require a signature on the bottom of a page that says they realize that it has to be below 48 inches? Or it's gonna
Well, again,
require a site plan,
If
something so
if they
that
do something that requires a permit,
so that when you go up there, you've got some enforcement capabilities to say, look,
Well, I put on my permits, like, for instance, the one where he said, oh yeah, they're all under 4 feet tall. And there were no heights of the rock walls on the plans. I put right in the permit that no rock walls greater than 4 feet will be built on this lot.
If the guy comes in with an engineering,
wait, let her finish.
So that's what I put right in the permit, so that when, Ron discovered there was rock walls greater than 4 feet high, it was unpermitted, so we had to stop.
well, I mean, Lincoln's not a big town either, and you're driving around and you're seeing someone doing some construction. I would think someone could just,
Somebody's usually more than happy to spill the beans.
but I brought this up because I know you made a comment about rock walls, and also Butcher made a comment about
Well,
rock
it's
walls.
not just rock, it's any retaining wall at all, no matter whether it's manufactured wall or anything. Any retaining wall at all, greater than 4 feet, has to be engineered, and it has to, they have to have a permit for it. If it's within the setbacks, they have to get a variance for it.
So
And
answer
we
me,
have 2 variances coming up, 2 other additional variances in addition to the one that I just noticed, that are gonna have to come for a variance for retaining walls in the setback greater than 4 feet high.
so answer me this then. If someone builds a 36-inch rock wall and they tear it back, they don't have to come in for a permit. They don't have to come in for anything.
That's
Is
correct,
that right?
that's correct.
If it's
So-
steered back correctly,
Who determines if it's tiered back correctly?
you gotta measure it.
He's measured them. Ron
Is there a
has.
standard? Is there a standard for
Yes,
tearing them
there
back?
Yep.
Is it a state standard?
What do you mean tearing them back, like they were 6 feet?
Terracing them back. The problem.
Oh, okay.
Terrace, yeah.
But the
Yeah.
problem with terracing on a lot of these
Yeah.
lots is you take up a lot of the buildable lot, just
Right.
for a wall, and that's why they all try to get their 8 to
high as
10 foot
possible.
walls put in, so they have a,
Bigger footprint.
right.
I get it.
The last thing I have, and it's the gate on Towel Road. I was told
So
about,
the minutes here, looks like we were gonna look into that.
well, we did, the board did.
No, Butcher's gonna look into it.
Butch and the board looked into it, and Towel Road apparently is not owned by the town. I wasn't sure. Peter apparently told Butch he didn't know why I didn't come talk to him. It's not my place to come talk to him to begin with. I don't go just talk to any homeowner or anything about something that I see. It's up to the town to figure out whether it's right or not, because they're the enforcement arm. But there seems to be, when I look at the gate issue, that there's ambiguity in our ordinance. Is that what makes a gate require a special exception? Is that, according to what I've read, and I've read everything way back from 2015 when everyone was talking about it, it seems to me that a gate can be put on anyone's private driveway, house, private driveway. However, our ordinance says gated communities, but it also refers to private roads too. So is it a matter of how many houses or lots are on a private road that you're going to put a gate on? Can I put a gate on my road? I own a road. There's 6 lots. Can I put a gate on it? Or do I need to come in for a special exception?
But all the properties on your road are individually owned. They're not all owned by the same person.
That would be a community.
But
Right.
just because they're owned today by one person, and we can use Peter, I guess, because this is when we're talking about Towel Road. Peter owns all the properties. There's like 5 properties he owns.
Yeah. Are they all on the same, different lots?
Different lots, 5 different individual lots, accessible off of Towel Road.
Toll,
Toll,
Told,
I
yeah.
call it Towel, I'm sorry. Toll Road. Does
pest house.
that require a special exception? And when I look at the ordinance, it really clearly, to me, says that whether or not you need a special exception, that if you're going to install a gate, that you come in for a special exception, and if you can meet the A through G requirements, then you can have a gate no matter where you're at. The only other thing that I've read through the history of it was that if you own just a private house, you can put a gate on a private house. So
I guess the question is, do you think the ordinance needs tweaking, or is Peter's gate really bothering you?
Well, look, I'm just looking for clarification.
So, okay.
I mean,
Also, you missed one.
look, I brought this, I get the bad name, A, because I'm a Bowden, B, because I'm on the planning board. But when I bring stuff up about 50% lots, gates, rock walls, everybody says it's Paul Bowden. Well, it's not Paul Bowden. Paul Bowden's looking at the ordinances, and that's why I'm asking the questions. You know, when I brought this up, it was like, oh, Paul Bowden's after you. Well, it's not just Paul Bowden. The ordinance is pretty clear, and all of the history says different things, you know? And like I said, what I retained out of it was that, you know, anyone can have a gate. And I'm not trying to say Peter can't have a gate, but I think the ordinance was clearly meant to say, if you want to put a gate in, come for a special exception, meet A through G, and you can have one, which Peter didn't do. If you're a single homeowner with a single driveway, you don't need any of that. But if you're, other than a single homeowner with a single driveway, I think you need a special exception. And
I think Joe has some comment here to
go ahead.
clear it
The other
up.
thing about Peter Gavoni, even that regulation we talked about and put in the ordinance a year and a half ago, saying the only time we could enforce gates on a road was on a town road, but not on the state highway. Look up the ordinance and the state law, and I'll tell you that. It's right in our own ordinance, Paul. I told you this 3 times. You keep saying that it's not, state doesn't have anything to do with it. So the state road, it is not under the town guidelines to tell you can and can't.
That's not a state road. It's not a
Route
state.
3A
is a state road.
Is a state road.
Tool.
Connector Road, it's off of a state road. Connector Road is a state
But
road.
there's nothing in our ordinance that says that.
Did you see that in the ordinance, Joe?
Get in there and ambulance and all that stuff.
Well, and that was all part of the reason why the special exception was made. The special exemption was made so that those things could be reviewed. And that's why I brought it up when I saw that gate. I thought about Ron. I know Ron's comments about getting through gates. You know, our ordinance speaks to the ability to get through a gate. You know, I mean, if the thing just came up and down as you drove up to it, that's really not a gate. But if you come up to it and you got to get out and go around, Ron spoke to that in 2015. So didn't the board. So I'm just looking for a little clarification here because
I mean,
I
I
brought
think the
that up
intent,
and I
I
really
think the
didn't
intent
get
was to prohibit gated communities, not to keep someone from keeping people off his property.
But that's not it. Read all the information and you're right, Jimmy.
Okay, so this is what it says. It says gated communities are allowed. So it's talking about gated communities are allowed if granted a special exception by the zoning board of adjustment.
Right.
Any request for installing gates, security personnel, fences and or walls to prevent the general public from having access to any part of town must receive approval for a special exception for a gated community. And if you're established prior to March 8th, 2016, you can continue provided the developer can demonstrate that the gates were included in the documented community master plan approved by the planning board as part of the site plan review. And then it talks about the zoning board of adjustment may grant a special exception for a gated community in the town of Lincoln, provided that, and then there's the A
Through G.
through G.
And also we have a driveway.
Okay, so is this a gated community that we're talking about? Is
We don't
that
have a
defined?
definition of a gated community, but I
We
can
do
tell
not
you
have a
what,
definition.
Say that again?
We do not have a definition of a gated community.
we do not. And I can tell you that in all of our minutes, the minutes of the planning board, I wasn't on it, but it refers to private homes, single individual driveways
Mhm.
versus anything more than that. And there was, here you go. Robinson said that what had been talked about in previous meetings was the private homeowners could gate off their house. Strickland agreed and added that anything that was multifamily could not be gated. So, I mean, and that's all through the thing, that as well as the access, Ron talks about, if they have to get out of a fire truck to open the gate manually, then that was a problem. So that was part of the reason why I saw that gate and I said, is this a problem for the town? It's not a problem. Well, I don't give a shit if he puts a gate up or not. But if the thing says, to me, the special exemption reasoning was that, okay, Peter, you want a gate? That's fine. Just come in and say, I'm gonna put a gate up, get a special exemption, show that you meet A through G, and then it's done.
Let me pull the board. You know, do we have enough information to determine whether the gate, you know, is a gated community?
We have nothing to do on this for describing it, but here's the thing. This board had actually in the selectmen agreed to have, and this, after talking with the state has controls of any gates going on any public highway. The town does not.
Okay.
That's a gated community. This right now, this was our ordinance 2 years ago. Hasn't changed. The town, the select board, the planning board voted this in. I don't know if it was voted in by town meeting, but we agreed that would be an issue. Gates would only be enforced for special exception for somebody going in off a town road.
So the one on South Peak
Peter Gavoni's
ends up onto a town road.
Well,
State road.
South Peak tried to put another gate on the S end over here. This is before you're on the board, before they get kicked off. Anyway, and they were refused another little gate on this end for that particular reason, if Ron was on the end of that meeting or not.
Chief Smith was.
What's
I think
that?
the reason the gate didn't open on the other end was because it was gonna prevent people from going to
Army base camp.
Femi Base Camp.
Right.
And I can remember that
But
clearly.
they were trying to put one on this end also.
That's the reason they didn't put the one on this end, was not because of the state road, it was because it was gonna prevent people from going to Femi
Correct.
Base Camp.
Okay.
They were told by the planning board they didn't want it.
And if you look at the master plan for South Peak, there's not supposed to be any traffic going east. It's all supposed to, the only traffic that's supposed to come from east to west is Loon Mountain.
So I guess when you come in for something for site plan review, we can look into that.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but
So let me just pull the board. Is your opinion, does Peter Gavoni need a special exception for his gate?
I don't.
OJ?
It's my impression that that's a single family even though there might be two houses, it's the same family
Mhm.
occupying one of those houses back and forth, summer, winter, seasonally. So it's not, it would not meet the definition of multifamily.
But there's
If all of the
five
lots,
That's
all of
one
the lots
time,
are
you
under
have
the
your turn.
same control, I think if he changed it into a multifamily or further developed the lots or sold off the lots, those could trigger a review of the gate. But if it's a gate on a driveway, a single family living beyond that driveway, I would say no.
There's also two of those lots are towards, on the roadside, which were this end of the gate. So that makes only 3 lots.
Beyond the
behind
gate. Okay, point well taken.
Okay, Steve,
I don't care if he has a gate or not, but if it prevents him from getting emergency services, be kind of dumb. That's it.
Paul,
Look, I'm not trying to prevent anyone from getting a gate, no one. I just want to make sure that everyone who puts a gate in, because the gate is a very touchy subject in town.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that everyone's treated the same. And, you know, if we allow one person to come in and not go through the process, to me, it's simpler to go through the process and prove that you meet A through G, because you probably could meet A through G, and then it's simple. And everyone who wants a gate comes in and meets A through G, unless you're gonna put one on just a single driveway. So for me, that's why the planning board made the A through G.
I don't feel it's a gated community, so I don't think he needs to come in. That's my personal opinion.
Just like my woodlot, I was gonna put a gate in. I told the town about it. They started giving some grief. So I just parked my lot right across the road, which is almost 25 feet long. It's not a gate. But how you can't get, how to get through that well would be a gate.
Okay,
I just
is
want,
there a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Is there a second?
hey, I just want it to reflect in the minutes for tonight, what the final outcome was for the gate. Can we do that? Can we make sure that's done?
I guess,
Understand what-
has the board made a decision that that is not considered a gated community over there at Connection on Toll Road?
Peter Gavonis?
Yes.
I don't say it is.
Steve?
What?
Okay, so is it 4-1?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. You can tell your opinion.
No, I'm not saying it's a gated community.
Mhm.
I'm saying that I think it should come in for special exemption and meet A through G. That's all I'm saying. I don't think we should, I'm not commenting on whether it's a gated community or not. I'm saying I think it should come in for a special exemption.
Okay, so I guess we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm hungry.